English paper piecing is a very simple method for constructing very intricate one-patch quilts where you have a lot of matching points. For example, here. Okay. Hexagons are probably the most popular shape that quilters work with, but this technique is also done using other shapes like triangles and diamonds, even squares, odd, irregular shapes, or a combination of them. Okay. So it's a really easy method to use to be able to match up points really well. Okay. It is a method that is done by hand, and it can be assembled in modular units, so it makes it a very portable technique to work with. For this technique, you work with pre-cut paper templates, and you can use commercial ones or you can make your own. What I like to do is I like to work with freezer paper templates. Freezer paper is known, if you ever use this, for applique because it is coated with plastic on one side, so you can iron it onto your cloth and it sticks and it can be used many times over. So I just print off a sheet with my templates, cut them up, and just iron them to the back of my fabric and ready to go. However, in many countries you do not have, freezer paper is not available, so the other option they have is to use some heavy cardstock. Do the same thing, print it off and on a sheet of cardstock, and then cut out your shapes likewise. The difference with the cardstock is that where the paper, the freezer paper shapes will simply be ironed onto the fabric, with the cardstock, in order to hold them into place, what you can do is simply take a paper punch and punch a hole in the middle, or as close as you can get to the middle. If you want, you can put a couple, and then I will show you how we will attach this, okay? I live in a country where cotton fabrics are not easily found. In order to conserve fabric, I like to put my iron my templates, if I'm using freezer paper, down in a honeycomb pattern. If I am working with cardstock instead, then what I do is I cut a template that's like 1/4 inch larger than the size that I'm going to use. I like to use with 3/4 of an inch templates are my favorite size. But so I just cut another template a little bit larger than that one, so it takes into account the seam allowance. And then I will use the same system, but I will draw on my fabric, okay, in that honeycomb pattern, to save fabric. If you don't want to use this method, though, you can simply cut strips about the size of 1/4 of an inch bigger than your template on all sides, and cut squares out if you want. I prefer also to cut it this way so that I end up with just a seam allowance around every edge. Otherwise, if I use a square, the seam covers a lot of the fabric, and I prefer not to use that much, to not have that much fabric behind, because I usually hand quilt these projects. And so if I were to use a square, I would end up with a lot of fabric behind my piece as part of my seam allowance. Okay, so here I'd simply cut So the first thing that I'm going to do in preparing, we're going to work on just this little basic flower shape, which is the base for like a traditional quilt, like the grandmother's flower garden quilt. So I'm going to work on this piece with the freezer paper, and I will show you later how to work with the cardstock, but it's basically the same principle. What I will do is baste the sides of the hexagon in a way that you will be able to pull the template out to be able to reuse it later. You can use any color thread that you want, because this will not be seen. It will remain in the back of the piece. But I do like to actually work with a similar thread, with the same color thread on mine, for one reason that I will show you later on. Okay, but so what we'll do right now is just fold down one edge, and fold down the next edge, and we'll just take a little stitch here in the corner, just through the fabric, not through the paper. Okay, fold down the next edge, and do the same thing, and we'll go all the way around. Just keep folding and take this little stitch on every corner to hold the seam allowance in place. Okay, and then once you finish, just cut your thread off. And then we have one finished hexagon shape ready to be attached to any other shape. Okay, so we'll repeat this with the second hexagon. Okay, so I finished basting the second hexagon, and here this is the reason why I like to work with the same color thread, because you might have seen that a lot of people will just simply make a whole bunch, stack them up, and then join them, but I like to join them as I baste. So once I have basted the second and third, fourth, etc. shapes, then I just use the same thread to continue to join them. And the way I join these is with a whip stitch. So just stick. It's a really tiny stitch. Let's see if I can get a little bit closer. Okay. And I basically catch in just a little bit of each edge on the edge of each hexagon. Once I get to the corner, I simply knot it off. And I like to sort of bury the thread, take like a couple little stitches like this, so that we don't cut too close to the knotted off edge. Okay, so you're the first two, and if you look at it, if you've used the same color thread, you can hardly see the seam there. It's a very, very neat seam. Okay. Now, if you're working with cardstock, what you've done is also cut your fabric about 1/4 of an inch larger than the template. And in this case, what you're going to do is use a pen to hold the template in place. Other than that, the process is exactly the same as what I have just shown you with the freezer paper. You just baste the seam allowance down over the cardstock without catching the cardstock itself. Simply basting down, tacking down the corners of each seam allowance. Okay. The freezer paper, since it's been bonded to the fabric, since it's glued to the fabric, obviously doesn't move at all, and it's easier to work with. But as I mentioned before, if you are not able to find freezer paper, this is another solution to allow you to do this technique. Okay. While you are working with the different pieces, it's best to leave the paper or cardstock in. You don't want to take it out until you've actually joined whatever pieces you are joining. And once you've finished with your whole project, then you can take this out, or you can take from the middle out of the projects. Like if you've finished a piece that involves, let's say for example this one, okay, then you would take this piece out. If you had more pieces, then you would continue to take more pieces out. Here's an example of what I'm saying is that all of this has been joined, and we've left the pieces on the edge, the paper, the templates on the edge until the piece was finished. Once the whole piece has been finished, then you can take out the paper templates. And the good thing about this method, like if you're using freezer paper, you just simply pull the piece out and you can use it again. Okay? The same with the cardstock template. In this case, all you have to do is pull the pin out. You can leave this in while you're joining it to other pieces, but then once you're finished, you simply, even with the tip of your scissors, you can just pull your template out. Something else that I wanted to mention is that sometimes when you're working with larger shapes, or with shapes like triangles or even squares, you will get some buckling up on the seams, on the side seams, because of this is a lot longer. So in this case, what I do is, when I'm basting, I take one stitch right in the middle of each side, then I continue the same. Okay, you can see this here. And what this means is that afterwards, once I have joined all of my shapes together, then I can simply take the scissors and that snippet, and when I pull the shape apart, that will be left inside the on the back side of the quilt, so you won't even see it here, and you don't have to worry about picking out threads afterwards. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. For more project ideas, simply follow the link to my website that you will find below this video. Thank you.